You might have heard of union and intersection types in TypeScript before. These are those types that combine other types with the ampersand or the pipe symbol. Well, did you know that these things can actually drastically improve how you handle complex data structures in TypeScript? So it's absolutely worth you knowing about this. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you how these features can simplify your code and also help with how quickly you can write it. So here in this example, I'm defining a type that can either be a string or a number. And then I'm going to use that type in a print function as the argument type. So this allows us to pass in either hello world as a string, or we can pass in 100, which is a number. And this is called a union type. In TypeScript, union types let you specify that a variable can hold one of many types. So it's an OR essentially. And that's useful when you know that a value could take several different forms, but you still want to restrict it to a specific set of types. So in that example we've just looked at, we were restricting it to being either a string or a number. But let's have a look at a more detailed example. So let's start by defining a type alias in TypeScript called input type, which is a union type strings and number types. So that allows our function to accept either strings or numbers inside a function. So in this process input function, we're going to have a parameter that's of type input type, and that ensures that it's either a string or number coming inwards here. Now what we're going to do is put an if statement in this and use type of input equals string. So that's specifically saying if the type inside this function is a string, then we proceed with a logical block associated with that string type. So we can just put some code in here, we'll just log that it's a string. And then we can say else, so the else is going to be if it's a number, and in there we'll just do a console log saying processing number, and then what is the number? Let's just multiply it by 2, for example. So what we've done here is we've created a function that we can call with a string, so ABC. That will drop into this part of the if statement, and it will call to uppercase. And then we can process an input of a number, and that will drop into this part of the string here, which will multiply it by 2. So that shows you how that you can use type guards like type of to handle each type appropriately inside the function. So you're kind of abstracting away the fact that this is polymorphic. And I've got another video on polymorphism just up here. That's definitely worth you checking out. So that's union types. Let's have a look at intersection types. Intersection types are another advanced feature in TypeScript that allows you to combine multiple types into one. So an intersection type represents an object that's a combination of lots of given types. So like a union type, where a value can be one of the types in the union, an intersection type says that the type is the value of all of those added together. So that's really useful if you want an object to have properties for multiple types. Let's have a look at an example in code. So we're going to begin by adding an interface called dog with a single method called bark on it. So that's just going to represent an action specific to a dog. We are also going to create another interface called cat, and that's going to have a function called meow, because cats meow. So what we can do here is create a type called catDog, which is cat and dog. So the ampersand in here is creating our intersection or type. What we can do then is create a class that implements catDog, and that class can have a bark method on it. So we'll just log woof, and it can also have a meow method on it. So we'll just log meow. There we go. Okay. Finally, we can create an instance of my pet. And just to show you that this all works in TypeScript, we can do pet.bark, but we can also do pet.meow. So there we define those two interfaces, dog with a bark method and cat with a meow method. And using that intersection type, catDog, we create a class, myPet, that implements both dog and cat. The object pet can now bark and it can meow. So that illustrates how an intersection type combines properties from both of those interfaces. So when might you want to actually use union intersection types in practice? Well, let's say that you're working on a project with a form that captures either a phone number or an email as contact information. So if you don't use union types, you might end up writing separate functions or duplicate code to handle each form of contact. But by using a union type, you can really streamline your code and you can ensure that the function gracefully handles both input types in one place. So a bit like the previous example where you're using type of, you can take in both of those into one function and then go down different code paths based on what the data type actually is. So we're going to create a user contact type here, which can either be an object with an email inside it, or an object with a phone number inside it. And our contact user function is going to take in this contact, which is a type of that. Then just like we saw before, we're going to say if email is in contact. So what that means is that if contact contains this property called email, this is what's called duck typing in a lot of programming languages like Ruby and JavaScript. We're saying if it looks like a duck and it quacks, it's a duck. So if we're saying if there is an email property in there, then we can just log to console sending email to their email address. Otherwise, we can just log to the console calling the phone number. So otherwise it's going to be a phone number. So we can call the contact user with an object that has an email property like that, and that works absolutely fine because an object with an email property is one of the types that can come into it. We could also call the contact user with an object with a phone number inside it, and again that's fine as well because phone number is one of the types in the union type. So what we've done here is we've created like an OR type, what's called a union type, that can take one type or the other going into it. So that contact user function checks which property is present and performs respective actions. The logic avoids duplicating effort and it makes your code more maintainable. It's important to note that while union and intersection types are greatly increasing your flexibility, they should also be used appropriately, like everything in TypeScript. Overusing these things can make your code base really complex and really hard to understand. So always aim for clarity and simplicity in your type definitions. If you feel like you need to use these, then go for it. If you think doing unions and intersections is just making your code more complicated, then you can just not do this. It's good to know all the features of TypeScript in case you come across them in the wild or in case you find a use case for them, but don't over-index on these and throw these all over your code base if you don't have to. Before I go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out my other TypeScript videos. I've created a playlist of all the most important TypeScript features and techniques, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Until next time, my name's James, and you can watch this video right here on my channel.